Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. I am the CryptoCrow, and I'm not going live today because I want to make this a relatively short video. It's more for sentiment than anything else. I every once in a while, I see what's happening in the price, and I think to myself, what is really happening? What is going on? Are we done? Are we late? Is the market crashing? Are we going down further? How far do we go? Do we come back up, or is it over for the cycle? And even though oftentimes I still find myself second guessing things because the price of the price action that I see it tends to just unsettle me a little bit. And then I have to go back to the drawing board and I have to look at everything from scratch and I have to put things into perspective for myself because I allow the social sentiment sometimes to cloud my better judgment. Right? Because I think, and I remember doing this when I was really new to the crypto space. And I remember just watching all the Twitter talk and the Facebook chats and the Facebook groups and the Telegram groups and Reddit. I used to read everything all the time. And it's very easy to get caught up in this doom and gloom sentiment that is often generated by newcomers that really just don't know any better. And these are generally the same people that they panic sell out of positions. They buy things like meme coins, expecting them to pump $1,000 overnight. It's the same group of people that generally just have no clue, and they're much more easily drowned out. And I shouldn't say drowned out. I should say they're much more easily manipulated by conjurations of their own imagination. Okay, I'll just say that. And when you read a lot of it, especially when you don't know who these people are, you don't know if it's some 13-year-old kid who just bought his first meme coin 2 days ago. You don't know if it's a professional analyst that's just dropping truth and alpha. You don't know. A lot of these people all generally clump together in the same kind of mentality, if you will. We see proponents of different blockchains trying to dunk on other blockchains because they want their bags to rise, kind of like a game of Lord of the Rings where only one ring can rule them all. And they project all this sentiment. And collectively, when you put it all together, it often comes off as very doomish and gloomish. And a lot of it is picked up by the newcomers in the space who don't know or understand the nuances or the technical achievements of this chain or the flaws of that chain. All they see are people that they feel are wealthy and all-knowing, arguing about dumb shit that to them, they're just thinking, well, I just read this yesterday. I read this from another guy today. It must be true. Like, there's just so much crap, okay, in the crypto space. So we're going to look at some charts and we're going to kind of get an idea as to what's happening because I've done this several times and I do it for myself first, just to remind myself of the reality of what's actually happening against all of the sentiment, the FUD and the nonsense and the people that really don't understand what's going on at all. And I posted recently on Twitter and I basically explained, Trump is in a really strong catch-22 because if he were to do everything that everybody believes he should overnight, then the rest of the community, the world would say, well, look at him. He's being destructive and drastic. And he's doing a bunch of stuff too fast. He doesn't even know what he's doing. Like, people will always have something to say. Now, if he takes his time, sorry, my eyes are bothering me so bad all of a sudden. If he takes his time and he puts together different teams of consultants that understand the market, understand the sentiment, understand the technology, and he consults with them for several hours on where are things, what do we need to do to make this golden era of crypto really take off, what do we need to do to change lives, be ready for it, what sort of policies do we need, what do we need to achieve what I've set out to accomplish, right? Yesterday caught me off guard as well because I'm sitting here for 2 hours streaming, which ultimately ended up as a 3-hour live stream, waiting for some nugget of definition, waiting for something that's going to tell us the direction we're really heading, when And we didn't get it, right? We got a little bit of glad handing, and we got a group of people that were basically saying, Trump, you're doing a great job. Okay, cool. But what does that actually mean if you break that down? Trump brought in all of the top CEOs of the biggest exchanges in the world. He brought in some of the biggest Bitcoiners in the world, who also own, like Gemini. I mean, the Winklevoss twins were there. We had Brian Armstrong there. We had all these different people there to basically, who ultimately spent hours at a round table conversing and sharing ideas and sentiment and concepts and things that they believe needs to be done to achieve X goal. We don't know exactly what that X goal is outside of making cryptocurrency in the United States the central hub for the world. Okay, so Trump is gathering all of this from all of these top level people. And a lot of people had this idea like, oh, Charles Hoskinson should be there. And, everybody had their own idea as to who should have been a part of this roundtable. But as I said before the meeting, I don't think Charles Hoskinson I don't think he was supposed to be there, is my point. Could he offer something to the conversation? Sure, of course he could. But I don't believe that is necessarily what this particular roundtable discussion was about. I think this is about a much bigger picture than any individual blockchain. I think it's more like I posted my theories on Twitter, basically saying, hey, I think that this could be a situation where, we had Chainlink's CEO there. I really do believe that they are trying to figure out how to implement some form of infrastructure to cater to TradeFi, real world assets, basically bringing the entire world of assets onto the blockchain, increasing liquidity options. So I'm assuming, I would love for somebody to come out and verify this or not, but I have to assume that he brought in all of these exchanges, all of these big people, because he's trying to figure out how to bring them all together into one giant liquidity pool for everybody. And not only just for crypto, but for all tokenized assets that are coming. And like, what do we need to do this? How do we get everyone to work together? I'm just assuming, I have no idea. I have no flies on the wall in that roundtable. I'm just thinking to myself, what potentially makes the most sense? Now, the idea is that we can't expect an overnight transition from, Operation Choke Point 2.0. That's been killed. Trump just killed it. He just signed an executive order making, basically stating we are starting a digital altcoin reserve. And honestly, when I look at the charts and I look at the pricing, to me, it looks normal. I think what doesn't look normal is the price falling in the midst of all of this bullish news. But if you look at things from a perspective of, well, we haven't done this stuff yet. This is all new. We don't know exactly what it means. We're all still waiting for answers. So I believe the market is really kind of playing out the way it always has. And let's look at the chart so that you understand what I mean. So this first chart here is the Bitcoin CME futures. Obviously, it's coming down a bit. Now, we could say that this could get a reversal and move back to the upside. We've been under this moving average now for quite a while. This goes all the way back to January, which is where this original CME futures gap was established, but we filled it shortly after. This is a 4-hour chart here. And then we had another CME futures gap up here that we filled, right? We filled that while creating this one. Then the price had to come back down. And, when I was talking about how the CME futures gap was likely going to get filled, a lot of people flamed me, but it did come down. It worked itself down, but we didn't necessarily fill it 100%. Now that, I don't know how much that's going to matter, but that gap was created all the way over here. This was all the way back in like November of 2024, which that's very, very, it's a long ways away, but these don't always get filled overnight. And when I first started talking about this was right around here, where I was basically saying this may come back down and fill. Well, we had some retracements and we had a lot of ebbs and flows, and then we created other CME gaps in all of this. But ultimately, the price finally did start working its way down to fill that gap. And I think we got most of it. And I think that that might be enough. Do we come back down from here and fill the remainder of that gap? I don't know. I'm not thinking we will, but that's just me. There are a lot of reasons why I don't think so. I think that if we look at a liquidity heat map, a lot of the liquidity is forming up above 95,000. Okay. Now, if we look at the price history of Bitcoin, which typically leads the market, okay, if we go back to the halvings of even just the previous market in 2021, there were 540 days from the halving to the final peak of the market cycle with the newest and latest all-time high before we started working ourselves back down to a bottom. Okay, we got the pi cycle top indicator that crossed over in April, but that was basically the first peak. And then we had the second peak. Okay, now that whole process took 540 days. Well, then we get here, and because the institutions basically said, hey, we want to launch some spot Bitcoin ETFs, sentiment exploded early to create a new all-time high before the halving itself, which threw everybody off. What did that do psychologically? That told everybody that we could get new all-time highs right now, and that this is where we're going. We're about to rip. We're about to take off to the moon. But it was far, far too early in the market cycle to make those estimates, to assume that that was the case. If we take 540 days from the halving to line up with previous cycles, the market shouldn't really peak until sometime in October of this year. So we would technically have quite a ways to go before that happens. So this price action here, where we're getting these corrections, basically this is on a 2-day candle, and we bounce off of these these support. This is the pi cycle top, or the pi cycle indicator right here, this green and orange lines. They're nowhere close to crossing over. I mean, we had such a wide berth all the way back in December of 2022 when the market was bottoming, and we've been slowly working our way into closing that gap as we continue to move forward into the market. But according to just the time frames between the halving and a market peak expectancy, we're looking at a closure of these two indicators sometime in October. Now, if Trump is trying to make the United States the central hub for all of crypto, are we really expecting the market to start peaking and just creating new all-time highs throughout? No, it doesn't work that way. Look at where we are here. So if we were to compare and contrast like where we are against the halving to like how far in our pricing structure is now, we're about 310 days in. If we basically line this up here to where we are 310 days in, we're sitting around the time of the first peak of the last cycle, almost exactly. So what we're seeing here is we could see a potential play out. But what I also, like maybe the price did peak around here at 109,000 as what might be the first peak of this market cycle, and we're pulling back a bit while we're loading up for the second major run of the cycle. A lot of people are comparing this market cycle to 2017. I disagree. I used to think that that was likely, but the reality is that the institutions are at play. The government is at play. Governments across the globe are going to start creating their own reserves, accumulating Bitcoin, creating a supply shock. And I believe that supply shock is going to start sending this price into new all-time highs, leading into a potential market peak of October. Now, what happens after that? Well, generally speaking, after Bitcoin has peaked, then we start getting the altcoin run that'll probably conclude the year into 2026. That's what I think is most likely happening based off of the data here. Now, we could also say, well, considering the fact that we had a new all-time high all the way back here in March of 2024, here we are a year later, and we've exceeded that, obviously. Maybe this is all being pulled forward a bit by a few months. So maybe we don't peak out in October, but maybe we go September, August, and into maybe July. Well, it's funny because in this period here in May is where basically smart contracts get introduced to Bitcoin through Cardano. Okay, so in the month of May, we're expecting not only the smart contracts for, we're basically expecting a multitude of things happening. Midnight's launch, which there's no hard date set, but everybody's pretty much expecting that it's probably going to launch sometime in May. We're going to have that as a major catalyst, which could effectively become the major catalyst even for running before Bitcoin does, because this is going to be big. If you look at everything that happened with the announcement of the digital reserve, when Cardano was named in that, it shot up like 80-something%, like bam, right? And we always say this in Cardano land, because it's not artificially manipulated the way some of these other blockchain tokens are. It does what it does based off of real world shit. It's not manipulated like a lot of this other stuff is. The token supply is higher, a lot of things are higher, and basically the market in Cardano moves the way it wants to move based off of its own real merit. And so when we see these significant pumps, we're always here on YouTube saying, we told you this is how it works. Every market cycle, Cardano does its own thing. It can go with the flow of the market overall, but when significant things happen, Cardano is the biggest boomer. And it generally just blows a lot of other assets out of the water, especially Ethereum, which we just saw an example of that in another chart. Well, I can show you. Yeah. So this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I mean, Cardano and Ethereum were down here, and this is ADA against Ethereum. Boom, strong rip to the upside. Now it's corrected and it's retracing a bit, and that's okay. It's still ahead of the game. But when things start really pumping again, of course, Cardano's going to rip right past Ethereum. And in previous market cycles, we got some significant rips to the upside against Ethereum. 286%, 98%. These are all major pumps against Ethereum, while Ethereum was rising to new all-time highs at the same time. Okay? And, people will say, well, that's not happening again. Yeah, well, you know what? Here, it already started. And this is generally what we see. We see these significant rallies, and then we get corrections. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You can see where Cardano pumped against Ethereum, started to come back down, rose back up, and then worked its way back up. We see this consistently throughout, okay? And so basically the point I'm making is that when we're looking at Bitcoin's price and we start putting things into the perspective of, well, this is what's happening, okay, with the government and everything else, and then we start really putting things in a realistic time frame, it's better to start understanding that right now, with everything going on with Bitcoin. Oh, and not even to mention, of course, you got midnight, but potentially another 37 million users being ushered into the Cardano ecosystem. Then those 37 million people who likely, I'm assuming, a chunk of them are also going to be holding Bitcoin. Then we've got the Bitcoin OS and an IOHK's version of that settles in ADA, basically adding smart contract functionality, privacy functionality through midnight, through the zero knowledge proof, all of the things that are coming to Cardano in May, which is right around the freaking corner, people. All of this stuff is happening at a time when Trump is working out all of these things for an infrastructure that I think is going to blow everybody's mind, quite frankly, which is why he's got all of these exchange CEOs in the same room working all of this stuff out. This isn't going to happen overnight. This stuff, it doesn't happen overnight, but will it happen over the next several months? Will this be a major proponent between what's happening with Cardano and what's happening with Bitcoin? I truly do believe wholeheartedly that these two assets are going to be the catalyst for these next major legs up throughout the rest of the peak of this cycle. That's what I truly wholeheartedly believe. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a big Cardano bull. I'm saying that because of everything that I understand about Cardano, the way it's being built. Look at what just happened with Cardano in Brazil. Mind blowing. Okay. Mind blowing. When I first saw the release from Cardano Foundation, I thought to myself, well, that sounds cool. But then when you look at how other people have broken it down in terms of transactions, throughput, new users, everything that it actually means, it's probably one of the biggest things to hit Cardano's use in quite a while, if ever, right? And that's still just a drop in the bucket, because then we have to say, well, what is Bitcoin's value going to be around May? Where do we go from there? What happens between now and May as it relates to Trump's plans with all of these people, right? And all of the things that they're trying to resolve behind closed doors before they come up with a resolution. That's the thing. We all want to be part of that conversation. We want to see what everybody has to say. Honestly, I think it's actually smart that they do it behind closed doors for now, because we don't know what these guys are saying, and we probably don't want to know. To me, it's almost like looking at an open heart surgery. I don't really need to see all that. I just want to see the person alive and well after, okay? But that could just be me. I don't really like watching surgeries on TV. I start feeling pains, and I mean, I'm the kind of guy that gets sympathy pains from my pregnant wife back in the day. Okay, when she was like, "Oh," I was like, "Oh," somehow I would feel the shit too. It was kind of weird, but I can't handle stuff like that. So it's like, leave the open heart surgery to behind closed doors. I just want to see what the end result is, and I think we're all expecting that end result to be announced like 24 hours or in real time as they're just starting to discuss these things, and it's not realistic. So what I originally thought, is the market going to peak here sometime in March? No, obviously it's not. That's not happening. I'm getting rid of that because that's not a thing. But I do believe that we are absolutely loading up for a major 5-6 month rally with a lot of ebbs and flows in the market. And we're going to get dips. We're going to get 10, 20, maybe even 30% dips multiple times between now and October, if that is in fact around the time where we start to peak. And then what happens is that once all this has happened, we've got Bitcoin liquidity, whatever its value is it going to be $3 trillion, $4 trillion? Like, what is the total value of Bitcoin going to be at this time as the price continues to move up? Do we peak out at a $280,000 Bitcoin? Is that what we're looking at? Multiply that by the 19.8 million Bitcoin currently in circulation, and there's your market cap. And then you've got all of that value capable of flowing into the Cardano ecosystem for these people to start take advantage of DeFi, lending, Web3, gaming, you name it, whatever you want. Okay. And when the majority of that is likely going to end up being settled in ADA, folks, what do you think is going to happen to the ADA price? I honestly think that what's happening right now is bringing everybody's fear and doubt and everything to such a low level. All of the people out there that are like, oh, I don't really know what's going to happen, but it just looks bad and this looks terrible. And I just don't, it's like, listen, the future is bright, man. There is so much happening right now under the radar, behind closed doors. There's so much happening. And I honestly, it's like, it's difficult sometimes to tame your thoughts and to tame what you know against what you think could be happening, right? It's difficult sometimes, but that's when you have to go back to the charts. You have to start looking at these time frames. You have to start understanding that just because we got that big rush at $74,190 early before the halving, that is not to say that that started off this parabolic run that was going to take us to $300,000, $400,000, et cetera, in a matter of a few months. It's not realistic. And especially given where we're at with regulation. And Trump is literally just cleaning his office right now. He just finished cleaning his office. He cut the Operation Choke Point. He just empowered the banks to start being able to be validators and custody providers and all these different things that the banks were ultimately shut off from being able to do before. Now they basically said, hey, you're going to be a part of this ecosystem as well. You're not going anywhere. You don't have to fight the system. You can be a part of it. This is all big shit. And when you really put it all together, it just makes sense that, in my opinion, I think that when we really start our ascent into this next leg up for what is ultimately going to be the peak of the market. Not only do I believe that the peak of this market cycle is probably going to be awe-inspiring, and I do believe that, not just for Bitcoin, not just for Cardano, quite frankly, probably even for Solana and other blockchains too, because it's not about any individual chain necessarily. It's about the crypto ecosystem as a whole, and we're not going to be able to discriminate because it's going to be absolutely nuts. We just have to be patient. We just have to wait, and we just have to crow our coins. Until next time, thanks for joining me. I'll see you soon.